What if the rejection you're so afraid of isn't actually coming from the world? What if it's coming from you? David, William, Pierce, welcome back. And this week I came face to face with a rejection that I never saw coming. For a long time I thought I'd been protecting myself from rejection by holding back my work, my voice, and my love, waiting until I felt more ready, more confident, more qualified. But this week I realized something deeply uncomfortable. The rejection wasn't waiting somewhere in the future, it was already happening, and I was the one doing it. Over the last 3 months I've been conducting an experiment into consciousness. At the beginning of May, I decided to step away from smoking, substances, and sexual release. Not because those things are inherently bad or because I had a problem with them, but because I wanted to discover what happened when I stopped constantly reaching for relief. This week I passed the 85-day mark, and it does feel incredibly empowering. And the level of focus and attention and awareness is definitely heightened. But it's also been a very hard week this week. The desire has been particularly strong. Initially, I saw that as a problem, something to overcome or resist, but during this week's Tantra studies, I realized the desire itself wasn't actually the issue. It was revealing something much deeper. In Tantric teaching, there is this idea of anavamala, which describes the fundamental belief that we are somehow incomplete. I'll leave anavamala there. For something, it's this idea that there's something missing, that we're incomplete, we're not enough in some way. And from that feeling arises what Tantra calls raga, or desire. Usually we think desire is the problem, so we either chase it or suppress it. But Tantra offers a completely different perspective. It suggests that beneath every desire is a longing to remember something that we've forgotten, our own fullness, our own completeness. And seen that way, desire stops being an enemy and instead becomes a teacher. Rather than asking, how do I satisfy this? We begin to ask, what part of me still believes something is missing? That one question changed something for me this week. As I reflected on the limitations I've been frustrated by recently, business, finance, uncertainty, I realized I've been assuming life was holding me back. And then something shifted. I wasn't actually afraid of the world rejecting me. I was afraid the world would confirm a rejection that had already happened inside me. Because every time I held back my work, every time I stayed quiet or convinced myself I wasn't quite ready, I was actually rejecting myself. That was the rejection I never saw coming. And it explained something that I'd been wrestling with for months. How could I expect the world to believe in me when I wasn't fully believing in myself? Another teaching that I explored this week is niyati, often translated as causality. It's essentially the law of cause and effect. Our present is continually shaped by the way we've been living. When our actions arise from a belief in lack, we're always trying to become enough, to earn approval or prove ourselves or avoid failure. But Tantra suggests that when our actions arise from service, when we give because we already have something, we're already in abundance, our actions stop binding us in the same way. We become more free. Not because life becomes easier, but because our identity is no longer depending on the outcome. This week's teaching completely changed the way that I'm beginning to see my own limitation. I thought they were evidence that something was wrong with me, but now I see that they've been invitations invitations to become more generous, more courageous, more open, to stop withholding what I already know that I have to offer. And that's exactly why I'm loving the transformational conversations that I'm facilitating. Most people don't actually need another strategy. They don't need more motivation or somebody to fix them. They most often need someone to help them recognize the story they've quietly organized their life around. Because once you can see the story, you're no longer living inside of it. So if you found yourself repeating the same patterns in your relationship or business or the way you think about yourself, then I'd love to explore that with you. You can find a link in the description. Perhaps the biggest lesson this week is that your limitations are not a sign of lack. They're invitations. Invitations to grow into the fullness of who you already are, to expand into that. I've realized these last 85 days haven't really been about giving something up, but about removing the stories that stopped me expressing who I already am. And maybe that's what growth really is. Not becoming someone new, but gradually stopping the rejection of the person that you've been all along. So I'll leave you with this week's reflection. What limitation keeps appearing in your life? And rather than asking, how do I get rid of it? Try asking, what might this limitation be inviting me to become? Because the obstacle isn't standing in your way, it's quietly shaping you into the person capable of moving beyond it. If this reflection resonates with you, I'd encourage you to watch this week's Tantra study, where I explore the teachings that inspired this week's insight in much greater depth. Miko says hi. And if you'd like support uncovering your unconscious stories, then book a free breakthrough conversation using the link in the description. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next transmission. Cheers.